Terrific. Thank you, Max. And yeah, thank you all for being here. Great opportunity for us to speak in such esteemed company. So thanks, Paul and Max and PAC Partners for that opportunity, and also to our banking partner, CBA, for hosting. We've got a great relationship with Adrian and John and his team down in Adelaide. So yes, my name's Rob Gratton, CEO Cleanseas Seafood. Nice for us to follow on from Ben and Cargill, and makers of such great, innovative, high quality fish feed, and Dave and our friends at Yumbar, our peers, and I guess fellow believers in sustainable aquaculture. So Cleanseas, our vision is to be a global leader in aquaculture, inspiring culinary experiences around the world through our sustainable premium seafood. We were founded over 20 years ago, essentially as an R&D company to close the life cycle of southern bluefin tuna, kingfish, mulloway and snapper. And these days we are 100% focused on yellowtail kingfish. It's a native fish that we grow in the natural waters of Spencer Gulf. Excuse me. In that time, we've grown to be the largest producer of kingfish outside of Japan. We effectively supply all of the Australian market. So if you see our fish on the menus here or buy it in a wet shop, fish market, that'll be our fish. And we also supply about a third of the European market. And so if you see our fish in Gordon Ramsay's restaurant or Nobu or Ivy Asia, that would be our fish as well. Listed here in Australia under the ASX, CSS ticker, and we also have a secondary listing up in Norway, and that really lets us get out and talk about our story in the largest investment community in the world. I'll talk a little bit today about our values, our core sustainability values, really reflected in our founding principles, founded in our farming practices, our supply chain, our commercial positioning, and also our research and development focus. Touching a little bit upon our vertically integrated supply chain, a key source of our competitive advantage. Our research and development, our breeding, and our early life cycle production of juveniles occurs at our Arno Bay, our land-based facility over in South Australia. We then transfer those fish to sea, grow them out over the course of about 18 to 24 months through to a harvest size, and then we harvest those fish 4 days a week, 52 weeks a year, to make sure that we have that continuity of supply going into restaurants and markets all around the world. We also do our in-house processing. So we bring those fish around to our processing facility in Adelaide, and there we send those fish out to market, but applying for our frozen product best practice liquid nitrogen freezing technology. Bringing that capability in-house and being able to freeze the fish so quickly means that we can take that highest quality fish, that Spencer Gulf provenance, and export it anywhere in the world on a low cost and importantly low carbon supply chain. And so basically, as David said in his presentation, the convenience that consumers are looking for all around the world, we can deliver that with our frozen technology. They can literally take the fillet of fish out of the freezer in the restaurant, in the sushi bar, or in the home, and know that they can thaw it out and have sashimi grade raw fish or a great sort of cooked product at the end of the day as well. Interestingly, I guess for a smallish company, we also have our own branding. You'll see there the black and white, the Spencer Gulf Kingfish is our high-end branding for restaurants and into the sort of the top-end markets around the world. And then our more accessible South Australian yellowtail branding is really about the mid-tier food service and home meal kit and at-home consumption. But both of those, obviously, leveraging the South Australian story and that Spencer Gulf provenance. And then distribution. I'll talk a little bit about distribution as well, and we do a lot of that sales and marketing function ourselves. So yellowtail kingfish, Seriola landi. I said before, it's a native fish that grows in the waters of Spencer Gulf. It's a high quality white fleshed fish. If you've seen it on the menus in restaurants, you might have typically seen it as a raw starter, a sashimi, a ceviche, a crudo in the restaurants, and it's certainly gained prominence in those high-end restaurants around the world. But what we're absolutely seeing with this fish, and part of our diversification story, is that it's excellent as a cooked offering. It's very flexible in its cooked offering, and because it holds its firmness and texture of flesh, we can really see it being used in multiple culinary applications, either in restaurant or for people to take home and enjoy. And you'll see here, some images from our website, some recipes if you'd like to sort of buy our fish and take it home and try for yourself. These are recipes that you can try for yourself at home, either the raw, the raw offerings, cooked or grilled on the barbecue like a salmon steak, maybe baked in the oven like a swordfish sort of steak, or indeed, cut up in cubes and put in a curry or a tagine or something like that. So a very flexible fish, both in a cooked and raw application, and really exciting for us as a a local producer, but an exporter all over the world. It cooks exceptionally well from frozen as well. So why do we farm in the Spencer Gulf? I've banged on about that a couple of times already, and really it's everything to us. It is the quality of the fish. It drives that culinary flexibility and its usage in a cooked setting as well as in a raw setting, and it's absolutely key to our provenance and our sustainability credentials. So the Gulf, as you might be familiar, is a vast body of water, 22,000 odd square kilometres, and hopefully it's self-evident that growing a native fish in its natural waters, relatively low stocking densities, less intervention, gives a quality product and gives a sustainable way of producing that product. I guess a nuance maybe that's it's worth noting, the Southern Ocean is a very seasonal water temperature body of water, over 20 degrees in the summertime and less than 15 degrees in the wintertime. And while the accountants, and I'm one, I can say that, will tell you it's possible to grow the fish faster in warm water all year round, it's that cold water cycle that puts on fat content, puts on a firmness of flesh, and breaks some of the health cycles, the bacterial cycles that mean that when we harvest that fish, having gone through both the summer and the winter, it has that firmness of flesh. It's a great cooked offering as well as a raw offering, which the warm water produced species, cannot sort of match. The other thing about the Gulf, its vast body of water, obviously it's a sustainability benefit to us, but it's also a growth story for us. So we'll produce about 3,500 tonnes of yellowtail this year. We've got licences to do 10,000 tonnes, so triple our current production. And there's a further 20,000 tonnes of unallocated licences in the Gulf. So hopefully that paints a picture of an industry and an environment where we're farming the fish well below what the capacity of that Gulf is. And along with that comes great environmental benefit, but also great positive social licence and community engagement. And so the people that we farm around and we farm our fish around, unlike some other species and some other industries around the world, it's a very welcoming environment and one where the importance to the community and the importance to the economy is well understood. It gives us the opportunity then to work with the regulator, the environmental watchdog, and the community continue to grow our business. And that's really important because the economies of scale and leveraging the infrastructure and sweating the capital commitment does rely on that scale. And we see, having sort of reached that sort of crossover point, we now have a profitable and a cash flow positive business as a result. Ben talked a little bit before about some of the R&D opportunities in aquaculture and finfish production. Clearly on the feed side, replacing marine-derived ingredients such as fish meal and fish oil with sustainably produced algal oil with insect protein is a great opportunity for the industry and for Cleanseas. Our fish all eat pelletized feed, manufactured feed, so the opportunity to play around with the ingredients mix to push for performance, push for sustainability is absolutely there. But then on the other side, the carbon footprint, the nutrient footprint, again, the Spencer Gulf is key in that story. And look, it's a little case study there. I'm sure many of you in the room are aware of some of the work that's been done on Asparagopsis as a feed supplement for beef and dairy cows, and how that has been shown by Cicero to potentially reduce the greenhouse gas, the methane emissions of that industry. Well, that are the two species of Asparagopsis that are the subject of that study actually grow naturally in the waters of Spencer Gulf as well. And if you go to the rock pools outside of our hatchery, you can see those species of Asparagopsis there. So we've entered an R&D agreement using our on-land facility at Arno Bay with one of the licensees, CH4 Global, to produce pilot commercial quantities of Asparagopsis. And so obviously using nutrient-enriched water from our hatchery and from Kingfish production to grow Asparagopsis more quickly and more economically, more commercially, and then harvesting that Asparagopsis and taking a third nitrogen by weight, a third carbon by weight out of the system and using that to help another industry, is a great sustainability story. But as some of the speakers this morning said, there's no sustainability without commerciality. And this, I guess for us, is a way of not only enhancing our sustainability, but if we can capture the carbon and nitrogen from our farming in this way through that multi-trophic aquaculture, we can then, farm at a larger scale, lower our cost of production by doing that. The other great point commercially is in the customer requirement, and we heard again before about how customers, we think, are going to be increasingly aware and require the environmental impacts of their consumption decisions to be known. I guess this slide is one that we're particularly proud of. Some that know the Cleanseas story will know that over the 20 years it's struggled to make the transition from an R&D business to a commercial business. That has had a few sort of bumps and starts along the way. But what we're very proud of, I guess, is the improvement in our financial performance over the last probably 2 or 3 years. Our most recent half-year result showed substantial farm gate and revenue growth. We're seeing really importantly for us, an increase and a convergence of fresh and frozen pricing. And if we think the future is around a frozen export product on that low cost, low carbon supply chain, as I said, having that frozen price in our export markets, approaching the fresh price we enjoy in our domestic market is a huge opportunity and one that our financial model will rely on. Ben, I'm sure would note that feed costs and the commodity costs of feed have gone up substantially in the last 18 months, and yet we've still been able to reduce our cost of production by 11%. And that's led us to really, for the first time in Cleanseas history, to be able to report positive operating EBITDA and also positive cash flows. Our financial strength extends to our balance sheet. We've got net cash. We've all got about $12 million of working capital facility to fund our expansion, and expanding from 4,000 tonnes to 10,000 tonnes is going to require that working capital, as David sort of talked about before. And then through our friends here at CBA, we've got $17 million of unused asset finance facility. And really that's key for us in terms of the next phase of our growth story, which is around investing in the business. So a little bit about how we get there. I think, I touched on with our supply chain before, somewhat uniquely, we do operate a sales team all around the world. We don't sell direct to consumers. We only sell through wholesalers, but our sales team around the world, 4 people here in Australia, 3 in Europe, 2 in North America, and 1 in Asia, are seafood experts, former chefs, and they go out to the market, go out to the buyers, go out to the restaurants and say, hi chef, here's the fish, this is the quality, these are the recipe ideas, this is how you can maximise the yield in your kitchen or in your retail business or in your meal kit business. This is how you maximise the yield and therefore maximise your profits. And really important for us, this is the sustainability story and the provenance story. This is why you should buy this fish, this native fish grown in its natural waters versus, maybe something else that you were thinking about buying. And that connection back to the producer is really how we've not only been able to grow sales volume, but grow pricing as well. And pre-pandemic, we were about $17.50 a kilo revenue. We're now at about $23.50, despite all of that diversification and growth in volume that we've seen. The other way we've got this business profitable is really focusing on turning working capital and leveraging our infrastructure. So in the hatchery, that means stocking more fish, obviously for future growth, but it also means stocking bigger fish. And we use that capacity to put bigger juveniles to sea. They take to the feed better, they give better performance throughout the rest of their year class. And so that investment and turning that, making that capacity in the hatchery has been key. We've also put a lot of effort in turning working capital more quickly. So our fish that were in the water for maybe 2.5 years are now in the water for no more than 2 years, and many of them are only in the water for 17 months. And that turning working capital means that there's fewer months that we need to go out there and feed and bathe and wash the cages. It also means a better FCR and actually a more sustainable product as well, because it means less feed, less fuel, less inputs going in there. Our full year harvest this year, we think is going to be around about 15 to 20% ahead of last year. That's a nice sustainable growth rate for us. It means that we can grow volume without eroding price, but that growth in volume gives us greater operating leverage, lets us reduce cost of production, and so that virtuous circle continues. We put a lot of effort into growing our infrastructure, new vessels, and increasingly investment in feed automation. And I guess just a little snippet on feed automation. Rather than going out and feeding our pens manually using, fuel and potentially wasting feed or not putting enough feed in doing it that way, feed automation lets us feed our fish using technology, using cameras from the office. And as soon as that first pellet goes through the water column and isn't consumed, we can stop. And so it's a great cost of production story. It's a great sustainability story. And again, I think as we heard before, the intersection of those two things is really where we want to be as a business. A little bit about the species and in terms of the growth potential. For us as Cleanseas, the growth potential sits in terms of our geographic and channel diversification. Half our fish are currently sold in Australia, about 40% are sold in Europe, and about 10% in North America and Asia. And yet North America and Asia are 80% of the market for seafood. And so that geographic expansion for Cleanseas is a great opportunity, but also is the emergence of this species and kingfish as a viable alternative to other aquaculture products like farmed salmon. And, we've seen, I guess, some of the challenges of farming salmon in Tasmania and in Canada, also in Norway. And, having a fish that is very complementary to that in terms of its culinary usage, has the quality, has the sustainability story, and yet is only about 1% of farmed salmon shows, I think, the ultimate potential for this business, and why we think, obviously, farming, in the Spencer Gulf and leveraging that supply chain really is a great opportunity for us going forward. So I think I've sort of hit on all of these points, but just a quick sort of summary. Obviously, we have that leadership position in the production of what we do, positive cash flows, positive operating profits, really strong pricing for this fish because of those quality, flexibility, and sustainability credentials that we're able to communicate to our customers and show them the benefits of. Great global demand for the fish, great opportunity for the species, and I think, as the world leader in producing this sustainable species, and obviously with the capacity to grow and the social license to do it, and the support of the government and support of the regulator to do it, I think we've got a great opportunity, not just to talk about Cleanseas and Kingfish, but also sustainable aquaculture going forward. And I think, as David said, a very exciting time to be in our industry. That's it. Thank you.
Question for John.
Just, you mentioned your FCR. How's that improved? How's your FCR improved over the last five years?
Yeah, it's improved.
You might have to explain FCR for some.
Yeah, so for FCR, feed conversion ratio, so how many kilograms of feed to produce 1 kilogram of fish, I guess, is the ratio. Pre-pandemic, when we had our fish in the water for 2.5 years, I think FCR was in around the sort of the 2.6 or thereabouts. This current year class, we expect to be around 2.3. But all of that really is just efficiency of working capital, turning the working capital more quickly, not having the fish in the water too long, not having the fish sort of go in the water for that winter period where we don't need them to go. I think the great opportunity for this species, if we see what's happened in agriculture and aquaculture generally, that focus on scale and development of feed and how that's driven FCRs in other proteins from one side to the other, that's the great opportunity for us. And I think if I was to guess, I think certainly a feed conversion ratio under 2 is absolutely achievable for this fish. And if we can get it in and around the 1.8 range while still having that winter period where we're putting on the quality and putting on the condition, then I think there's a terrific sort of sustainable model, but also financially viable model as well.
Would you see an impact with asparagus impacting your FCR?
Where it would be a benefit to FCR is in the ability to farm large farms and sort of deploy infrastructure to farm in that way. Without that symbiotic sort of partnership, and we are measured on productive capacity based on the nutrient that we're putting into the system. Pulling that nutrient out would let us have bigger farms, larger farms, and then obviously drive efficiencies through automation and infrastructure.
Question for Patrick.
Cheers. Thank you. It was really interesting to understand a little bit more about the ability to put other sustainable inputs into the feeds. Do you think that you'll end up seeing premium pricing for like low carbon equivalent fish products out there, or do you think it'll be more of a first choice opportunity having the ideal of the low carbon?
Yeah, I actually think we're starting to see it already. If I think about the hierarchy of what we offer to consumer, it's quality. I think first of all, it's a magnificent fish. It's a beautiful fish. It's a high quality fish. That culinary flexibility, how restaurants and even at home you can maximise the yield, is really important. But that provenance story and that sustainability story is third, but it's the one that's moving fastest. And I think if we look at the premium that we currently get versus farmed salmon as an example, it's around about that 20-25% premium. I think it's one of the elements in the mix that's driving that premium already. And for sure, that's our view of the future, that, you know, customers out there, consumers, restaurants, buyers and supermarkets, whoever they might be, like I said before, are going to be increasingly aware of the environmental impacts of their purchasing decisions, and they're going to want to know the detail in truth, not just, oh yes, we're growing a native fish, but what is the carbon footprint, what is the nutrient load, how much are you taking out with Asparagopsis, and therefore what does that mean for the environment as a result.
Obviously, salmon, Kingfish commands premium over salmon, and with tighter consumer spending, are you seeing any impact on demand of Kingfish?
Look, we've seen probably the opposite. I think, our premium pricing has certainly attracted, a really competitive environment, and it seems like every day we're hearing someone, a Norwegian salmon farm has now decided they're going to do Kingfish instead. I think that it's probably, sort of more the fact that, those attributes are becoming more important. And I think some of the concerns of other species are not necessarily salmon, but, other sort of protein sources are becoming more prevalent. And so there's a great sort of, I think, rebalancing going on from, high volume commodity to, people consuming with a conscience. And we're not talking about $100 a kilo Wagyu steak equivalent with our fish. It's, retails are probably $50 a kilo. So it's a nice sort of, premium but mid-tier. It's not sort of, unobtainable in terms of that price point.
And is there any places in Sydney you recommend to try your fish?
Rockpool's always good. That's sort of not too far around the corner. Giovanni Pilu does a great job, has some cooked fish on the menu. Lots of places in the website. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.